Come on, lift it. Get it up. Get it up. Useless piece of what, bench shirt. Useless. All right, welcome to the Ironwood Gym. I'm going to talk about gear a little bit today and that flavor of that Is It Cheating series that I've been putting out. Had one on the sumo deadlift, had one on the bench press, arching during the bench, and kind of looked at why everyone's so upset about this stuff and why they shouldn't be upset about this stuff. So we're going to continue on that trend, and we're going to talk about gear today. And I brought some of my gear from my competition days in. I'm going to show that real quick, and then we're going to see, is gear cheating or is gear not cheating? So I was never a great power lifter. I love lifting, love competing. Just my numbers never really got up to where I would have liked them to gotten to, or whether those great standards of powerlifting. But this squat suit here, this was a squat suit that I had for many years, and I actually adapted it so it would have Velcro straps. It did not originally have Velcro straps. Took it to a seamstress or whatever, a tailor or someone that worked on dress clothes, and kind of taught them what I needed, and they did it for me. But able to get up to a 606-pound squat in this, and I believe I was lifting in the 242s at the time, probably weighing about 235, and that's if my memory serves me correct. Used that for several years, used the same suit over and over again. I did not have a lot of money to be constantly reinvesting in new gear, so I used the same stuff a lot. About 3 weeks before my last competition, I blew that suit out. Okay, I blew the legs out. I think I got them sewn up a little bit right now, but I did it myself, and it's not good. So I ended up having to go buy this suit, which I was really excited about trying, and had it recommended to me. Never could get used to it, and that's a point that I'm going to make here in a little bit. I only had 3 weeks, could not adjust to this suit, so ended up going to my last meet, briefs only, and hit a PR in the squat, 610 pounds. Okay, this is my bench shirt, which you saw just a few minutes ago in the start of this episode. This is my bench shirt. Used this also for several meets. I was probably running to the end of its life, and benched, and that's benched around, I think it was 408, which was in my next to last meet. Benched 408, and I think that was the same meet that I did that 606 squat in. So I was probably weighing around 235, somewhere in there. And then my deadlift suit, which this was another suit that took me getting some used to. Had the Velcro straps in the back, and that's really where, to me, I had to adjust and figure out as I went on. And it wasn't something I just threw on and got a whole lot of more weight out. Ended up in that one about 620, but if you are aware of my history in deadlifting, that was way beyond, and I was going downhill in the deadlift because of some hip issues, and I actually needed a suit on just so I could deadlift, period. Anytime I went over about 400 pounds, I had to have something on protecting my hips, providing some support. So let's look at this for a second, because especially nowadays, people really hate gear. They hate squat suits. They hate bench shirts. They don't like people that lift in gear. Okay, it's just, that's evil. It's cheating. You should never do it. But why? Why do we have that hatred for gear? And the mindset is that it's cheating because it lifts more weight for you. Well, as you could see at the start of this episode, I had my bench shirt ready to go. It was on the bench. It didn't lift the weight. I put it on the bar. It didn't lift the weight. I put the bar on the shirt. It still didn't lift the weight. So, so obviously the gear is not lifting the weight. But we're going to come back to that. Let's first, as I always do, I go with the legal ramifications or the legal part of this first. So when you're in competition, you have rules that you have to follow. And certain federations allow different things, allow more. Certain federations require less. Okay? They have... So if you're lifting in something like the WPO, the World Powerlifting Organization, if you're lifting in the IPA, and I don't follow the rules anymore because I quit competing about 6 or 7 years ago, so I don't know where all the federations stand. But there are federations that allow pretty much limitless gear. That's within their rules. You can have, you know, a pair of briefs, double ply pair of briefs, a double ply suit, and maybe adding something else in there, you know, your knee wraps. You can wear 2 suits if you want. They don't have requirements that say your gear has to be this, okay? Other federations become a little bit more restrictive. You can have double ply, but that's it. You can have your squat suit, but you can't have briefs. If you go all the way down to like the USAPL, I don't know if the USPA did it. I know the USAPL did. They follow IPF rules, and they actually check your gear at weigh-ins. You have to show them your gear, and they check it. And I remember doing this back when I started competing, like 2001, I think. I would have to submit my gear, and they would bring out a tape measure and make sure everything, the seams were the right thickness, the belt was the right thickness, the knee wraps were the right thickness and the right length. They couldn't be too long. Even the wrist wraps, they checked the wrist wraps to make sure they weren't too long. So everything was checked so that you, when you went out on that platform, were following the rules. Now, it was cheating if you gave them that gear, you showed them what you're going to lift in, and you went in and put something else on. Or if you went in and snuck a pair of briefs under your suit, you know, or snuck something under your bench shirt. There was a big controversy, I know, back probably around 2010. I don't know what year it was. There was a lifter, I'm not going to say his name, very prominent lifter. People were saying he had boards stuck under his shirt. I don't believe he did. I've been around a lot of bench shirts, and certain body types, it'll almost look like there is something under there. So it's, who knows whether he did or not. I don't believe he did, but if he did, that would be cheating. Okay, so it's important that you know the rules of the federation you're lifting in, and that you don't go beyond those rules or try to get around those rules, because when you do, that becomes cheating. So I know I was always but any federation I lifted in, and I kind of had to just take whatever was available. So I lifted in several different federations, but I would get into that rule book well before the meet, figure out what I could use, what I couldn't use, and make sure I stayed within the rules. Even if they didn't check the gear, I still made sure that I stayed within those rules. So as long as you, as I've said, as long as you stay within the rules of your federation, it's not cheating. So why are people so upset about someone going to a powerlifting meet, utilizing gear that's within the rules? Why are they upset about that? I don't get it. I don't have an answer for you other than that they don't do it for whatever reason. So they're upset that whoever's utilizing that gear is lifting more weight than them. That's the only thing I can think of. But if they wanted to compare, they shouldn't compare themselves to geared lifters if they're a raw lifter. They should only compare themselves to other raw lifters, not worry about what the geared lift, not worry about what the guy putting on the suit is doing. Because you can't compare the two. Okay? a little bit of a history. When I got into powerlifting, originally powerlifting didn't have gear. It wasn't a thing, but people were always in the pursuit of lifting more weight. Okay, so yes, gear can help you lift more weight. There's a caveat to that. Okay, we're going to get into that in a little bit. But gear can, doesn't necessarily, can help, again, help, not do it for you, help you lift more weight. But originally there was no gear. And then as time went on, they started bringing in different parts of gears, knee wraps, squat suits, or tighter singlets. Okay, then the singlets got a lot tighter and became squat suits. And then someone came up with the idea to have this really tight shirt that would help them bench more. So it just kind of went from there, and it became a whole industry where people were making a lot of money off of making powerlifting gear. When I started lifting, there was no such, this is 2001 approximately, there was no such thing as raw. That was not a thing. No one lifted raw. If you lifted raw, you were going to compete against the guys with gear. Now, the guys with gear weren't cheating because there was rules regulating the gear. It was you putting yourself at a disadvantage if you were going to actually compete. If you're just going to lift, it's no big deal. But if you were going to actually compete against those guys, you were putting yourself at a disadvantage by not using the gear, unless you were so strong you could keep up with them. But everyone, for the most part, maybe those beginners or the guys that were just hated gear, which was very few in number, but everyone else, almost everyone, I'd say 95% or more, 90 to 95% probably, utilize gear well within the rules. Okay, so it wasn't until, I believe, probably those late 2000s, because I wasn't there at the beginnings of gear, but those late 2000s, raw started becoming a thing, and they started creating divisions for raw lifting. Now, if you were a lifter and you tried to sneak something in and lift raw, compete against the raw lifters, and you tried to sneak some gear in somehow, that would be cheating, obviously. But there was different divisions, so you had to pick which division you wanted to be in. You wanted to be in raw, or you wanted to be in gear. You wanted to be in single ply, or you wanted to be in multi-ply. And you had your pick, and you just declared that on the entry form. And those are the people that you were competing against. So, in that sense, we still should not be looking at gear as cheating, provided that you're utilizing what's legal and you're lifting in the correct division. Okay? All right. So we've established that. That's the legal aspect of it. That's following the rule book or not following the rule book, and what's cheating and what's not. Since then, okay, and we can go back to this whole rule book, but even just kind of stringing off of that, people are still upset that people in gear are cheating. Why? Okay, well, he lifted 1,200 pounds, he squatted 1,200 pounds, and he's got a squat suit, and he's got briefs, and he's got knee wraps, and he's got, who cares? He's in a federation that he can do that. The gear doesn't do it for you. I promise you that. The first time I got into a bench shirt, I was lifting less than what I was raw. Why? If gear makes you so much better, why was I lifting less? Okay, here's the thing. This is the thing where raw lifters that are so adamant against gear need to open their minds, quit being so narrow-minded, open their minds to what the world really, what's really out there and what's really going on. When you lift in gear, there is a skill component, and it is a learned skill component. Some people can get some out of their gear right off the bat. If they've never used gear before, just their mentality and how they go about things, they're going to get something out of it right off the bat. Others, like myself, really, I never really had that just bulldog aggressive mentality. I wanted to learn. I wanted to do things correctly. I was focused a lot on technique. If it didn't feel right, I struggled with it. So I struggled in gear. I was never a great geared lifter from a technical perspective because I had to learn, and I was never a great athlete in school. I was athletic, but I wasn't a great athlete. I always had people that were better than me. So gear really brings some athleticism. Bench shirt, especially, even the squat suit, that brings some athleticism into it. Not necessarily the can you change directions fast or hand-eye coordination, not that sort of thing, but the ability to learn how to utilize your body and move the way you need to move for the gear. Because the skill component makes technique, or takes technique basically to another level beyond raw. It takes time to learn the gear. It takes time to practice in the gear. It takes time to develop the correct technique and learn the groove that gear wants you to be in so you can get the most out of it. So you hear stories of guys getting 300 pounds out of a bench shirt. And I'm not talking about the new band shirts that are out. I'm talking about when I was competing back prior to 2016, because my last meet was in the spring of 2016 or early summer, spring of 2016. So yeah, there were stories of guys getting 200 pounds, 300. 300 is a little excessive, but at least 200 pounds out of their bench shirt. I never got that. Okay, the most I ever got out of my bench shirt, and this took a lot of work to get to that point. My raw bench was 336, and my equipped bench was 408. So about 70 pounds. I didn't even break 100. Okay, my squat suit, probably a little over 100 pounds. My best raw box squat, I didn't squat utilizing a box or without a box hardly ever. But my best box squat, belt only, was 485. My best equipped squat, which was briefs only, oddly, was 610. So you're looking at about 130 pounds out of my squat suit and knee wraps. So there's other lifters getting an easy 200 out of their squat suit. I've heard of lifters getting 100 just out of their knee wraps. I never did that. I was never able to do that. There is a learning curve. There is a technical aspect. There is a skill aspect to gear. Okay? And it takes a while to learn, and it takes getting people that know the gear, that have used the gear, to teach you. Okay? You're not just going to jump in and think you're going to get a lot out of it. It's going to take some work, and it's going to take people working with you to help you get to that point. So I had one other point I wanted to make on this, and right now I cannot remember what it was. Oh, so gear, and I'll give this is kind of my perspective on gear. That gear is a whole nother world compared to raw. And for me, it was kind of a love-hate relationship. I hated training in gear. Why? Because it took a lot longer. It took longer every time you got done. You had to get someone to help you. For the majority of my lifting career, I trained by myself, not always. So I had to find someone to help me. Most of the people I was around didn't understand gear very well. Now, I did end up getting some people that really helped me out that did not know gear, and I would teach them, and they were excellent at handling me at meets and helping me in training. But sometimes they were busy and they couldn't be there. You know, they were working with their teams while I was training. So it was very difficult to train in gear, especially under my circumstances. And it took longer. It took longer between sets. It took more out of me, which wasn't a big deal from a recovery standpoint. And I didn't mind that so much. It was just the training in it and constantly having to learn it and get people to help me. The time commitment, that was all a big hassle to me. I loved competing in gear. And if you're really familiar with powerlifting, a lot of meets aren't that competitive. So it's really about how you're competing against yourself, essentially. And some are, and those are a lot of fun when you actually have good competition at the meet. But I really did love competing in gear, and I really learned this when I went to a meet, and I did not have the gear that the Federation wanted me to have. I think it was a single ply meet, and I have no problem with single ply. I like single ply. That's how I started out. But I had been competing in multi-ply, and this meet that I was going to go to was single ply, so I didn't have all the gear. I think the only thing I had was the bench shirt, and so I went and competed raw on the squat and raw on the deadlift, and I used the bench shirt for bench. So that was the meet that I really figured out that I didn't like competing raw. Okay, I didn't like it. I was bored out of my mind. You know, I had no energy. I had no motivation. I was not, I wasn't up. I couldn't get myself up for a squat. I love to squat. And I was flat. So, and that's just kind of how I figured out. I mean, I realized that, hey, when I'm in a geared meet, that whole process of getting the gear ready, getting my straps pulled up, getting my knee wraps, getting my knees wrapped, getting the belt on, getting those wrist wraps is that last thing I'm doing as I'm walking up to get ready for a squat. That really brought everything out in me that allowed me to lift well. And when I didn't have all those different things, and the rush of making sure you're beating the clock and that you're ready in time, because I've seen that and I've been in that situation where they're counting down, hey, you have 10 seconds to get this bar out of the rack, 5 seconds, and you're still walking up to the bar because it took longer to get ready, or you mistimed it, or they didn't have to change weights, so all of a sudden you're up and you were thinking you're going to have another 30 seconds or another minute. So all of that just kind of coming together, that's what I loved about getting under that bar with gear. When it was raw, it's okay. Let me strap my belt on, tighten up my wrist wraps. I'm not like, okay, you have a bar there. Am I supposed to lift that? I just didn't have that motivation, that same level of motivation, or that same, if you want to call it an adrenaline rush or whatever you want to call it, it wasn't the same. And so for me, and I did a few raw meets, that was the last time I competed raw. It was kind of that mixed meet, and it just didn't do it for me. Raw was not my thing. Other people prefer raw. I would challenge those people that prefer raw, and it's okay to prefer raw. I don't have a problem with that. If you want to lift raw. But I would challenge those people that lift raw, that criticize the geared lifters, to start stepping into the gear, start trying to learn the gear and see what it takes. Just see what it takes to prepare yourself for a geared meet versus a raw meet. Even if you don't go to the competition, I encourage you to go to the competition. Just do a couple meets with gear. I know that's not always cost friendly, but those people, if you're a gear, you favor raw and you hate gear and you're criticizing people that utilize gear, try it out. Try to get that new perspective, because they are two very different things, and you may find out that you don't at the end of the day, you may discover that you really don't think gear is cheating as much cheating as you thought it was. because there is a lot that goes into gear, a lot that goes into learning it, to the skill component, the technical component. Just makes it an entirely different world than raw lifting. So is it cheating? Absolutely not, as long as you stay within the rules of your federation. That's the end of this segment. Hopefully, maybe you can start to see get a little bit different perspective on gear. I hope so. If you do like what you're seeing on this channel or in this video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, please. If you know lifters, coaches that you think can get something out of this or you think might like it, please share it with them, send it to them so they can watch it and see what they think. But until next time, stay strong, and I'll see you in the Ironwood Gym.